What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're talking captaincy for Game Week 23. And once again, a bit like last week, there isn't really a standout, right? We don't have that top player with a top fixture who's also in form. There's lots of reasons to go against some fixtures, some players, and lots of kind of pros and cons for different matchups, different players, and stuff like that. So we're going to go through the main captaincy candidates as I see it, based on the fixtures and also what I see people talking about, but also look at the other matches at the end. So if you do enjoy this video, please do give it a like. As always, really does help out. Hit subscribe if you're new around here, and let's jump into the first team. So had Kane not got injured, this would have been the big matchup of the week. It's the one everybody would have targeted. Everyone would have gone for Kane captain or Son captain. It probably wouldn't have even been a conversation around anyone else. It's just which of the two are you captain? And obviously with a Kane injury, that has changed. Now, let's start off with West Brom, because they are pretty awful, right? Anytime we do these captaincy videos and one of the teams is facing West Brom, they're always the standout kind of fixture pick. And you can look at the numbers on screen. So expected goals conceded per game on average so far this season is 1.92. That is so bad. So bad. 1.97 over the last 6 and then 1.65 over the last 4. So the teams they've played, Sheffield United, Fulham, City and West Ham. Now, most of those teams outside of Man City are not necessarily high scoring. West Ham potentially you could say decent option, but that game was actually quite tight. I remember that one. It wasn't long after Antonio had been back, and then you go back a bit further, it's Wolves and Arsenal, right? So Wolves not really looking that great recently, but obviously Arsenal did put 4 past them, so there is still opportunity to do that to them. We saw Man City do that really well. We know how they're going to come and set up though. Even though West Brom on the eye test have been looking to play a bit more in their recent matches, they're not going to do that against Spurs, I don't think. I just think even without Kane, they'll see a risk there with Son, and they'll probably sit deep and just wait for an opportunity to try and nick a goal, basically. And then you look at the stats over the last 4 matches for Son, they're awful. 4 shots in the box, 7 chances created, 1.03 expected goal involvement is really bad. And I get that everybody is now saying, well, Spurs without Kane are awful. I get the take, but I don't know how much we can really put into that when you see the teams they face, right? They're now 2.5 games without Kane, half a game against Liverpool, 1 full game against Brighton and 1 against Chelsea. Now, it doesn't excuse the way that Spurs have played, because it has been awful, right? Watching that Chelsea game as a Son owner was just horrible. He didn't have a touch in the box till the 87th minute, right? Hardly had I don't think he even had a shot in the box necessarily. But the last 2.5 games against those 3 teams, statistically, when you look at expected goals conceded, shots in the box, are 3 of the 4 best defences this year. So Brighton, Chelsea and Liverpool, and Man City make up the 4, right, who Spurs haven't played within those last 4 matches. So for me, as a Son owner, and a lot of you out there, it's a bit like a rock and a hard place. You've got Son, who doesn't look great right now without Kane, and you're wondering where the creativity is coming from. But at the same time, we're measuring now and saying that Spurs are just awful without Kane, when they've actually played 3 very good teams in that time, and West Brom stats are really bad. This is the ultimate, maybe even for the whole season so far, the ultimate form versus fixtures, right? Son has barely scored any goals recently. His underlying numbers aren't looking good, but he has played some tough fixtures. This is the easiest fixture on paper that you can have. West Brom at home, it doesn't get any easier than that. So as a captaincy option, he has gone from a few weeks ago being the number 1 or the number 2 behind Kane to, well, actually now it's a bit of a kind of high risk, high reward situation where you go for a player that's out of form, but if he bangs against West Brom, a lot of people are going to be put off going for him. So I still like him as an option this week, purely down to the fixture, but I fully appreciate that there are some issues at Spurs, and you just don't know where that creativity is coming. I don't see Dele Alli getting in that side anytime soon. Ndombele got pulled off late last night. Lo Celso is still injured, I believe, so it's not looking good for Spurs, and I do think there's plenty of reasons to go against him. But if you wanted to go for a bit of a differential, and I say differential in the loosest terms because I'm sure he's still going to be quite highly owned and captain, but West Brom, it just doesn't get better than that. So I can see why people will be put off, but at the same time I would not be shocked if he gets good points here, double digits. So I think this game's going to be quite popular as well. Man United versus Everton, specifically Bruno Fernandes after his 17-pointer against Southampton. But interestingly, he hasn't done a lot in recent times FPL wise in terms of scoring points, and I've said in the last captaincy video, every time I do these numbers, because obviously I'm doing it on like a rolling last 4 matches. So next week it'll be this week plus the previous 3, etc. The numbers keep coming down. And interestingly, right, they've just played Southampton with 10 men and then 9 men for part of the game. And Bruno Fernandes' shots in the box didn't go up. Right? So over the last 4, last time I did the captaincy video, he only had 4 shots in the box. He still only had 4 shots in the box when you include the Southampton game. So he didn't really have too much of a goal threat in that game. It just so happens that he got a penalty, which we know he's on, is always going to help top of his score. And I'm not taking penalties away from him, right? Because this is one of the reasons I like Salah. It's why I like Bamford. It's why I potentially like Antonio if he's got penalties too. But yeah, his goal threat from open play is not looking that high recently. He did up his chances created. I think it was on 7 before I put this video together. Now it's on 11. Obviously, he did get to create quite a few against Southampton, but I wouldn't put too much emphasis on that game because of what happened. Martial got a lot of shots in the box in that one, so he's on 10 for the last 4 now. Cavani on 6. Rashford, even though he got good points in there, his numbers are still really bad. 3 shots in the box over the last 4, only 1 chance created. He does have West Brom and Newcastle to come, so I still think there's a good reason to hold him. But in terms of captaincy, I'm not sure how confident I'd be in that right now. Looking at the opposition, I think Everton's a pretty good fixture, right? On paper, it's one of those ones you think is quite difficult, but over the season, 1.37 expected goals conceded is not that great, to be honest. They have slightly improved over the last 6 and the last 4, but when you look at who they've played, so Leeds away, obviously they had quite a few chances, but then Newcastle, Leicester, Wolves, West Ham and Sheffield United. So out of those teams right now, the way everyone's playing, Leeds and Leicester are probably the toughest games. The rest of them, maybe not quite that difficult. West Ham, fair enough, but the rest of them, not, in terms of goal scoring threat, there's not really too much of a threat there. So the reverse fixture, Man United scored 3 goals. One of them did come at the end while Everton were chasing, so it wasn't like a three goal whitewash or anything like that. It was on the break. It was Cavani's, I think it was maybe his first goal for Man United. It's where Bruno Fernandes, I was a Rashford owner, I was just waiting for Bruno to pass right, and he passed left to Cavani, but obviously we scored, so it was good. I think Bruno's always a good shout, right? Yes, he's not having too many shots in the box, but he's always got penalties. He's always creating chances. Good team around him. He's always going to be in and amongst the points, and he has the penalties to back him up as well. So I think this week, if you're not sure about anyone else, right, and given that Man City are playing Liverpool, it feels like Bruno is just a good default captain. And sometimes, obviously, that's very boring to say, and a lot of people don't like playing FPL like that. But if there is no one else, you just default to the player that's done the best this year. 9 double-digit hauls, for example, in 22 games. 3 of them 17 points, right? So he's got a big score in him. So if you're really, really not sure, for me, I would just default to Bruno Fernandes. The rest of them, I just think Martial and Cavani are just sharing minutes, and that will put me off. And Rashford just not looking great. If I had Rashford, I would hold, but captaincy, I probably wouldn't go there. So if I was unsure about Son, and I didn't want to default to Bruno Fernandes, this is where my captaincy armband would be on West Ham. I'm not going to entertain Jesse Lingard or Souček. I get why people like those players, but I think captaincy is a step too far. But for Mikel Antonio, it is definitely not, right? And when I do these captaincy videos, I don't usually come in with this kind of bias that, right, I'm definitely going to say this player is the best. I like to try and keep an open mind, and this has kind of opened my mind to potentially just not going for Son, because the numbers for Antonio are so good, and Fulham's defence is not that great either, despite how they might have looked better recently, might not have conceded that many goals. The underlying stats tell me there is still goals to be had, as we saw when Leicester beat him 2-0 recently. And Mikel Antonio, like, his stats are just always good, and sometimes you get players and content creators will sit there and tell you how good their stats are. They never seem to really come through and convert that into FPL points. Antonio does all the time. Since he's been fit, he's hardly blanked at all. Last 4 matches, 10 shots in the box, 6 chances created. That is the best stats of anyone we talked about on this video. Obviously, Fernandes was 4 shots in the box and 11 chances created, but most of the time you'd rather have that goal threat. And Antonio, that's what he has. And his expected goal involvement is 3.65. That is the highest out of all players in the league for the last 4 matches. And by the way, that includes penalties. So any player that's had penalties where you get kind of easy XG, because a penalty is 0.76 expected goals, is still included in that expected goal involvement. Antonio doesn't have that, and he's still the top. Then you look at Fulham's numbers. Over the season, they've been pretty poor, 1.53. And then you hear, well, they've improved. Well, last 6, they've got worse, and last 4, they've got slightly better, 1.49. But that is not a good number. 1.49 expected goals conceded per match is still bad. And you look at Fulham, last 4 games they've played, Leicester, West Brom, Brighton, Man United, then last 6 includes Chelsea and Spurs. So the games have not been easy, but West Ham is not an easy game either. Like, I think David Moyes and West Ham, you see him as this team that's hard to break down, sit deep, but they're not really like that. Souček comes forward, and obviously Rice just sits in. And then they've got creativity in front. They've got Lingard, who just played really well. They've got Lanzini, who can come in, Fornals, Benrahma, Bowen. There's loads of good players there. And I don't think Moyes is going to come into this game with Fredericks and so far on that right side. He's going to play Bowen instead, most likely. That's even more opportunity for Antonio. So I think this is a really good matchup. West Ham looking good. Antonio getting himself up to full fitness. By the way, if he's not at full fitness yet, and how good has he been? Imagine when he is full fitness. And obviously Fulham are just a pretty poor defence overall as well. They can be got at. And I feel like this is a game where Fulham are going to try and play, right? They're going to see this as a game they could win. It's not like a Man United or a Liverpool where you got to worry quite a bit. It's just West Ham, right? That's how they'll probably see it, even though West Ham are obviously having a really, really good season and fully deserve to be where they are in the league tables. So I think Antonio is a really good shot. If you were just basing this on numbers alone, you might argue he is the best option this week, right? His underlying stats are better than Son's, better than Fernandez's over the short term, right? And even over the whole season, his numbers are good in terms of per 90 minutes. And then you look at the fixtures, Fulham isn't quite as bad as West Brom, they're not quite as bad as West Brom, but they're still pretty bad. So arguably, Antonio is one of the best options this week. If you've got him, give him serious consideration. So let's look at some of the other matchups. I think if I was looking outside of the 3 games that I've talked about, I'd probably just go to Leeds because I think Crystal Palace just haven't defended that well this year, and Leeds will be all over them, right? We see that every single game, and I just think it'll be I think it'll actually be a bit more open than you'd usually expect from a Palace game because Leeds tend to do that, right? Because of the way they play, the opposition feel like they can go and do the same. And it's almost like a basketball match sometimes. Whether or not Palace will allow that, I don't know. But I think there is a possibility of it going, the game going like that. So Bamford has to be an option. Rafinha too. Rodrigo looks like he's going to be out. So if you did want a differential punt, then Leeds is probably where I would go. Outside of that, I'm hard avoiding Liverpool and Man City for captaincy. We've had times in the past where maybe Salah's been in great form, and people have considered the captaincy because he can score against anyone. But that could be a low-scoring game. Like, a lot of people are still wondering whether to play both their Man City defenders or to bench one. And the reason they want to play both is because they're such a good defence. It's going to be hard for Liverpool to break them down. Could I see Liverpool nicking a goal? Yeah, absolutely. They're at Anfield, of course. But I just see it low scoring. There's just not enough upside when there's so many other good options to go for Liverpool or Man City. With Chelsea, I mean, 2 things. One, Sheffield United look to be playing a little bit better right now from a defensive point of view. And who's even going to start in attack for Chelsea? So I just wouldn't want to go there. And then outside of that, I'm struggling really. Aston Villa versus Arsenal. The reverse fixture I think was 3-0. Villa played really well in that. Leno and David Luiz are out, so that possibly makes Grealish and Watkins better options. But I also think Arsenal in general have been playing better since that game, so I'm not sure Aston Villa will have it all their own way. I do think Grealish will have probably a bit more space than he did against West Ham to work his magic. But in terms of double-digit hauls, which is what you're trying to predict really for a captaincy, I'm just not seeing it there. So I think if I'm looking at other matches, it's probably Leeds versus Palace. I don't think I would look anywhere else other than the 3 matches I've talked about. Son and Antonio, I think on paper, are probably the best captain options just because of underlying stats for Antonio plus the fixture. And then for Son, it's really fixture. It just depends what you feel like with Spurs without Kane, really. There we go. That's it for this one. Thanks very much for watching. If it has helped you decide your captaincy, please do give it a like and hit subscribe if you're new around here as well. If you want to support me a little bit further too, I do have Patreon, link in the description below. Everyone that signs up goes up on the Legends Wall, so thank you to everyone that already has signed up. You are, as the wall says, absolute legends. We're all the way onto like 6 screens for this now, which is absolutely crazy. So thank you to everyone signed up. There was a Q&A that's already gone live on there today as well. So if you want to go and check that out, make sure you sign up to the middle tier. There's Slack access, WhatsApp access, all that good stuff. Just go and check it out on that link below. I will be back tomorrow morning at 10:15 to get my transfers and captaincy absolutely locked in. Obviously, once I've got my transfers done, I'll put it up on Patreon, but you will see it on the deadline stream as well. That will start around 10:15, and then we'll obviously go all the way through until the Game Week 23 deadline. So looking forward to that. Make sure you come and join us. Otherwise, good luck with your decisions, and I'll catch you soon.